How did it affect Sam? He felt like a huge failure. He started off with all these big plans and dreams of how he's going to change his life and get closer to God, and in 1 week he'd already failed. He let himself down, he let God down, and he just felt like giving up. Besides, who was he fooling anyway? He was who he was. He'd always been this way. And did he really think he was actually going to change? As he's about ready to sink into a bottomless pit of helplessness and hopelessness, a little voice kind of whispered in the back of his head, "Pray. Talk to me. Tell me what you're feeling. Ask me to show you the truth." So Sam did. You know, it was so faint, it was almost as though he wasn't sure if he was imagining this soundless voice in his head, but he thought, well, what have I got to lose? I'll try. So he got down on his knees and he started to pray. But this time, this prayer was different than all the prayers he'd prayed before. This time it was almost like he was spilling his guts before God. It came out in a torrent. "I'm so sorry. I feel so bad. I feel like a failure. I can't believe that I let you down. I let myself down." And as he was just repeating this over and over to God, he started begging God, "Please, Lord, just do anything. Fix it. Fix me. Do whatever it takes." And then this thought started creeping into his head. It was almost imperceptible in the middle of all of his agony and his praying to God and crying to God, just barely visible. But it was almost like a door cracking open an inch at a time, and on the other side of the door was a bright spring day. And suddenly it burst open and he realized the truth. First, he realized the lie. Yes, in fact, he had failed to reach his weekly goal, but he recognized, I actually feel closer to God. This is the first time in my life I've actually told God how I really feel. For the first time, I feel like God's talking to me. I failed, and yet somehow I made progress. It seemed like if I failed once, that was it. And all of a sudden, just like that, he discovered Satan's lie. Satan had been telling him that failure was fatal. One mistake and it was all over. Time to give up, pack it in, forget it. But it was a lie. He realized the truth. God spoke into his mind and he recognized it. There's only one small difference between success and failure. It's the difference between getting up or giving up. Sam recognized that's just what had happened. He'd been trying and failing, but in the end, he was actually making progress towards the most important goal, the whole reason why he had started out on this plan in the first place. Wow! It was like a whole new revelation to him. Now he wasn't threatened by every time something would go wrong. He recognized that success wasn't just one step, a continuous thing. Many of us fall for that same thing. We end up believing Satan's lie. We get this idea in our head that when we decide we're going to change, we're going to have one success after another, after another, after another, in some straight line that goes from where we are to where we want to be, and there's not going to be any hiccups. There's not going to be any stepping backwards. We aren't going to fall down. That's what we expect, but that's a lie. Because failure is part of life. Satan tries to convince us that if we fail, that's it. We give up. God has shown us over and over again through examples in the Bible. Vast majority of all these saints have succeeded and fallen. Succeeded and fallen. If you look at it, it looks an awful lot like a stock market graph, up and down, up and down. But what you notice is from beginning to end, there's always an upward trend. That was the truth that Sam finally got burned into his head. And he realized, there it was. Solomon had been talking about it for thousands of years. Only this is the contemporary English version. It's pretty blunt. Lazy people, you can learn something by watching an anthill. of it's talking about going out and working, but part of it is about working despite failures. I have personal experience with this. You see, at my house, I don't know exactly where they come from, but apparently we have a few nests of ants around. And every year, certain times of the year, the ants start coming in the house. They'll find something in the trash can they like to eat, and first it's just a few, and next thing you know is that this army of ants going back and forth in this big line, you know. Sooner or later, I discover it. I take whatever it is they're eating, throw it out, and start spraying the ant killer. And they disappear, mostly, for a while. But next thing you know, there's a little bug over in the corner. It's just 1 or 2 ants. Next thing you know, a whole big line. Again, I take away the food and put the ant killer. It doesn't stop them. They've learned that if they keep searching, if they be persistent, keep trying, they'll find enough food to keep the colony alive. And that's what they do. They keep coming in, I keep taking away the food. But they always get enough to survive. Therefore, they're successful, even when I knock them down. When we believe God's truth, it's like a whole new horizon opens for us. Because then, we don't have to worry about failure. It's just a part of life. It's part of success. When Sam finally learned that, he started praying and said, you know, God, I realize I need to continue. But exactly how do you want me to continue? You want me to just keep doing what I was doing, or something else? See, already he was learning to listen to God more rather than just creating his own plans. And God told him something, very important aspect to change. Try something different. Don't just keep trying to do exactly the same thing over and over again if it brought you failure. What was Sam's change? Instead of 2 books, he had to recognize the reality he really wasn't that fast of a reader. We're down to 1. 1 book of the Bible a week. And with that, Sam took off. He started reading 1 book of the Bible every week successfully. He started praying every day, morning and evening, successfully. With that, Sam moved on into the next stage of change, maintenance. You see, Sam had already figured out what it was going to take. He planned his change. He'd gone through the point of thinking through all the reasons why and why not. He decided to act on it, and now he was maintaining that action. He was continuing moving forward. He managed to do that for about 4 months. And then something else was on the horizon. Sam didn't really know it at first, but it was another big lesson. It was a lesson that would take his ability to have change in his life from a limited human perspective to something supernatural. But like so many lessons that Sam had already learned, the beginning of that lesson looked like failure. How did it come about? The first thing Sam noticed was boredom. Yep. He'd set this goal. I want to be closer to God. He figured out what he was going to do to get there. He was going to pray every day. He was going to read his Bible. And he was doing that. And now it wasn't even a struggle anymore. You see the momentum of his habits? His habits had changed. Now he was in the momentum of reading his Bible every day and praying every day. But now it was just that, something he did every day. It was routine. It was almost like just something he checked off on his to-do list. It was, well, boring. Sam thought, well, that probably isn't exactly what I wanted to have between me and God, you know? And it kind of disturbed him a bit. But he thought, well, you know, I just need to keep going. He prayed about it. And he thought, well, maybe if I pray about it and I take it to God like I did before, maybe God will just give me this whole new revelation and it'll just fix it. But this time, well, you know, it didn't really work. He prayed to God, and it almost seemed like God was ignoring him. Or so he thought. But he kept going because he just somehow knew this is what God wanted him to do. So he kept right on with his routine. For another month or so, before he started seeing some results, he started realizing he was seeing God a little more clearly than he had before. And now he was starting to recognize how these different ways people lived their life and how God interacted them with the Bible were actually similar to him. He could start seeing how the things that they went through were relevant to his life. And he'd never really seen that before, and so he noticed that slight change. But it was another month before the light really came on, before he really got it. You see, at that point, he was reading the story of Naaman. Now, we all know the story of Naaman, right? Naaman was this great general in the Philistine army, except he had one problem. Well, it wasn't really a little problem. He had leprosy. Leprosy, of course, was deadly, especially back then, since they didn't have any drugs or anything to cure them. But Naaman had a slave girl, a girl from Israel, that probably one that he picked up in one of his raids into Israel, brought back into his household, and this girl told his wife. You notice he didn't tell Naaman. She didn't tell Naaman. Perhaps Naaman was a little gruff and not too easy to approach. But somehow or another, this slave girl had compassion on her master. She realized he had a problem, and she told his wife, "You know, ma'am, if the master would just go to Israel and see the prophet Elisha, God could heal him of this leprosy." Well, his wife was in love with Naaman, wanted to keep him alive, didn't want him to die. And so she immediately went and told her husband. Well, her husband, being the good general that he was, wanted to go talk to his king. And his king, being a smart king and recognizing that Naaman was one of the best generals he had, he said, well, if there's any chance of Naaman being cured, I absolutely want this to happen. So in full kingly fashion, he writes a letter to the king of Israel. What does he say in that letter? "I'm sending Naaman to you. I'm expecting you to cure him of his leprosy and send him back." Can you imagine what the king of Israel thought when he got that letter? Are you kidding me? What am I, God? I can't raise the dead. I can't fix this leprosy. He said, man, this is crazy. The king of the Philistines is just looking for an excuse to come out here, have a fight, and create another war. And by the way, I think he just got an extra 30,000 chariots. We are in trouble here. The king of Israel was upset. But Elisha heard about this. Sent a messenger to the king of Israel and says, hey, calm down. Don't worry about it. Just send Naaman to me. I'll take care of it. Eventually, all this miscommunication settled out. Naaman made the trip from the Philistine territory all the way into Israel and finally found Elisha's home. You'd think with one of the highest generals from the Philistines coming to see him, Elisha would have been out there standing and waiting, right? The guy's pretty important. No, didn't happen that way. Not sure exactly what Elisha was doing, but didn't meet the guy, just sent his servant out. Gave him a message. Here was the message. Go to the Jordan River and dip 7 times. That's it. Done. Naaman was furious. What? First you don't even come and see me? And now you're going to tell me to go dip in that dirty, filthy, stinking river? You know, if I got to go dip in a river, we got a couple of rivers back in my home country that at least are clean. What's wrong with you? How dare you? Don't you know who I am? He left mad, angry. But one of his servants must have been a really dedicated man. Because Naaman, excuse me, you know, I'm pretty sure that if Elisha had told you to do some really great and difficult thing, you would have done it, right? You know, like maybe kill 1,000 men or climb the tallest mountain in all of Israel? Well, yeah. This is a simple thing. You know, we come all this way anyway. I mean, what does it hurt to try? You know, maybe it'll work. Who knows? Well, Naaman calmed down a little bit. He goes, well, okay, take me to the river. So Naaman goes to the river, wades down through the mud, grumbling under his breath, takes one dip under the water. Yeah, that's what I thought. Ain't nothing changing. Dips down a second time, still no change. Okay, let's get this over with. Dip, 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 dip. 7 times. Oh, wow, I'm cured. This time, Naaman comes running out of the river, full of excitement, gratitude. Takes him and his men back to Elisha's house and tries to pay Elisha. When Sam read this story, he all of a sudden figured it out.